Welcome back to the Cringy Movie Collection Podcast, where we watch movies and cringe. My name is Raf, as always, and there's probably a co-host.
Yes, it's me, and I befriend all the cats.
You know, I hate doing this intro.
Hi, it's Ludovica, by the way.
I hate when people in, like, YouTube videos especially, for instance, I'm looking up a video on, like, a game that I like, right? And I don't care who's making the video. I care about, you know, the sort of the engagement with the game I like. The video always begins with, "Hi, my name is whatever, Cucumber25, and today we're going to talk about Max Payne," or whatever. And I'm always going to like, who the hell cares who you are, right? And so I hate doing the intro to the podcast, because we do talk to each other, and we will use our names, so we have to introduce ourselves, but I hate it. And I also hate that every time I do it, there's this awkward pregnant pause after I go, "My name is Ralph," because I don't want to say anything more. I hate it so much. And you introducing yourself so we can get on with the actual podcast.
Okay, welcome to the Movie Collection Cringy Podcast. And he's Ralph.
Did you forget the name of the podcast?
Welcome to the Cringy Movie Collection Podcast. He's Ralph, and he doesn't like to introduce himself, but he is very cute.
And more skilled at actually talking, as we just learned.
And I'm Ludovica, and I like cats.
Right. This is a DVD review podcast, I should say. It is a collection of DVDs that I amassed in my teens, so in the sort of early 2000s, late 2000s. And, well, just overall the 2000s, I suppose, is what that means. And a lot of these DVDs I still have. And my girlfriend and I, we watch these movies now. And because they're mostly bad, I get berated for it.
Yes, by me. And then I burn them.
Sometimes.
Yes. Maybe not today. Because today we're watching the very, very successful and very, very popular and very, very...
Good. Come on, you can just say it.
The phenomenon of a generation that is Titanic.
The thing is, it's not a phenomenon of a generation. We were at the movie theater, and clearly people that were not of our generation were there.
Yeah, because they were curious about what happened to our generation.
They were laughing through the entire movie.
Yes, and they were streaming on Instagram.
Oh my god, we'll get to that later. So yes, even though I have 2 copies of this movie in my collection, we actually watched neither of those. We went to the cinema because James Cameron wanted more of our money, and we gave it to him.
And it was Valentine's Day.
It was very romantic.
I also had the VHS of this movie.
So you've seen it before?
I've seen it once.
You hated it?
I was very scared of... I didn't like water when I was a kid. Or
Movie about a ship is really...
middle school.
Really bad choice.
And yes, I really did not like ship or swimming or anything. So that was my main concern when I watched this movie the first time. While now, I actually paid attention to the plot.
So we'll find out if anything's changed about your opinion.
Yeah.
After the crazy music.
And why did you first encounter the DVD of Titanic?
That's all weird. You, again, just like in episode 2, phrase this question so strangely as if you're trying to mix it up, but It's really just you not speaking English.
Now it's episode 7 and we need to mix it up again.
You're not counting correctly. So
no, we did 5 of your movies, 1 of my movie, and this is episode 6.
No.
Okay, now we're in episode 6 and we need to mix it up.
Okay. So I originally got Titanic on like a swapping platform. like a online like DVD trading place. So you put your own DVDs up for trading, and you get like points, and you can cash those in for other people's DVDs.
Oh, so you don't really just like swap, like I have a...
Not directly.
Garfield, do you want to give me your Titanic for it?
Exactly. Well, I mean, I guess in theory you could, but this platform was actually more kind of creating a market for used DVDs.
Oh.
And I got it because it was kind of cheap, and I was interested in it.
And
because
you didn't have enough points.
No, I had enough points. That's why I got it.
Not to get the less cheap ones.
What do you mean the less cheap ones?
You said that you got it.
It's a
because
bargain.
It was cheap.
Yeah, I got it at the time when it was cheap. It's not that it was always cheap.
Okay.
Someone offered it for a good price, so I got it.
Okay.
Because I was interested in Titanic. I'd heard much about it. And there was a video game called, as so often there is, a video game called Titanic Adventure Out of Time.
Oh.
It's a very strange version of a point-and-click adventure where you kind of walk along the Titanic and you
Click on things.
You do click on things, but it's really you're like a secret agent, and you're supposed to find out information about someone, and then it's about history as well. I cared a lot about how the ship looked, because it was just like Titanic the movie, was very much based on what the ship actually looked like, and so I really liked the kind of the
But I do
lusciousness of it
agree,
all.
like with Rose, it looks like any other ship, like any other transatlantic, like the Queen Mary, or the.
Oh, you
like,
couldn't be any more wrong, darling. It's like 100 feet longer and twice as luxurious.
I totally agree with Rose on that. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a transatlantic ship, like all of the others.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Like, you agree
they
with
are
that.
all beautiful.
So I don't mind the idea that there's other beautiful ships, but there is a myth sort of around Titanic.
Yeah, because it's sunk.
Exactly. And I find that fascinating.
That doesn't make it beautiful.
No, it's a beautiful ship that
Okay.
has a myth attached to it.
Okay.
I'm not saying one causes the other. I'm saying compounding factors make this more interesting than other ships.
But still beautiful for floating.
Okay. So I was interested in just seeing what the movie's like. I suspected it would be terrible. And I enjoyed it very much, so I just kept watching it. And I don't really know. The second DVD was, I think, once again, a gift from my mom, but I'm not sure why. I think she might just have had it again and just gave it to me because she knew that I liked it. And I think it is supposed to be some kind of like special edition, but I don't know what's special about it. Maybe it's the special features. You know how DVDs were back in the day. It was just a movie and then like another hour of stuff. So that's why I have this movie.
Okay.
But since you've only seen it twice now, I would like to see if you can remember and summarize what happens in this
try
movie.
to summarize
Okay.
in a summarizing way. So the movie starts the present day, well, at least in 1997, and the story, like,
What?
well, it's not really the present day anymore.
Okay.
Because Rose is gonna be 101. If it was the present day now, it would be 126.
That's right.
Okay. There is a mission to go and look for things in the wreckage of the Titanic. And we get introduced to the story of this diamond, the heart of the sea. That is what they are looking for in the Titanic. But they can't find it. But they find a drawing that is actually a drawing of Rose. So we get introduced to both the diamond and Rose. That is the main female character of the movie. Then we jump back and we get introduced to all the other characters that are gonna be on the ship, but they're still on land.
So when we jump back, you mean we jump back in time?
Jump back in time in 1912 when all the characters are getting introduced to us and they are still on land and they're boarding the ship. So we have Rose mother, Rose fiance, and then we have Jack.
With his best friend, Fabrizio.
That speaks bibbidi boobidi exactly as I do. And then they get in the ship and the ship sails. Now, we all know what's gonna happen in the ship, but the next, big chunk of the movie makes us forget that the ship is gonna sink, because we have all of these personal relationship developing. We get to know that Rose is not really in love with her fiance, that is kind of a jerk.
Do you think that Cal is kind of a jerk?
Well,
he's a terrible jerk.
Yes.
Everything he says is disgusting.
But I do think that in the beginning, like when he's ordering the lamb for her, without even knowing if she even likes lamb, I will still give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, it can be like a little jerk or a big jerk.
Okay.
And then we learn that it's the biggest jerk of them all.
Yeah.
And she feels trapped, and she doesn't feel that she feels that her life is already over, and she has no perspective, and it's under-stimulating. So,
right.
She runs away. Then she decides that the good thing to do would be to kill herself. And then we get to know that Jack and Rose meet, because Rose is in first class while Jack is in third class. So they would never have met any other way, but Rose wanted to kill herself.
Do you agree that the movie makes it look like there is, like, because they call it steerage, right? They don't really call it third class as much. But presumably there's a second class, which is kind of absent from this movie, is it? Like, you see any second class people? Is that a thing on the Titanic?
Yeah, I think that all these, like, the other layers, like the third class is very on the base of the ship.
Yeah, but my question is, in the movie,
like, as people in second class,
doesn't it feel like there is only rich people and poor people? There's no medium between those
They're
two
not
things.
interesting enough. Because the first class is special because it's so luxurious, and the third class is special because they're rats. But the second class is probably average, and nobody go and watch a movie for average.
Yeah, no. You need contrasts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Jack and Rose meet, and he talks her out of jumping.
Because she wanted to kill herself by jumping off the ship.
Yes, but then everybody thinks he was raping her. So she defends him. She says, well, you just saved me. She omits the fact that she was trying to kill herself. And so they have to kind of like invite him to dinner and like be nice to him, even though they, like, everybody else that is not Rose really doesn't want to do that. In the boat, we also get to know other characters.
In the boat?
Yes. Now,
On the ship?
yes.
Even at the... Look, at the beginning of the movie, little girl goes, Daddy, it's a ship. This is not a boat. Come on.
Okay. On the ship.
Because there are boats on the ship.
Okay.
So...
On the ship, we get to know some other characters that might be important, like the fiancé has this bad guy that does his dirty work, and
his name is Lovejoy, which I always thought was a weird name.
It's a killjoy.
He's also kind of a lapdog. He doesn't seem to have his own motivations.
Yeah. Then there is Unsinkable Molly. And she's great, and she's new money, so she does this very good like contrast, because she's still in first class. She has a lot of money, but she's more like attached to reality.
Right, and she's the only kind of rich person who doesn't disdain Jack for being poor.
Yeah, I think that actually she's rooting a lot for Jack because he's like a good guy, and he really cares for Rose, while she immediately understood that Carl is a jerk.
Yeah.
Anyway. Then where there is the guy that designed the ship.
Andrews, yeah.
Yeah, and that tells us that there are not enough lifeboats. This is an important piece of information to know. So, Jack and Rose fall more and more in love, and Jack starts to bring her to the third class, in which she can see how, like, life with all this color and feelings and
the Irish
music
party.
and smells and sounds and
beer
thing, like they work. And then of course everybody's trying to separate them because, oh my gosh, this is like a third class scam.
It's also scandalous.
Yeah.
I mean, she is engaged.
Yes, that's true, but
plus her mother has kind of ulterior motives as well,
yes,
because they seem to be running out of money. So she kind of wants to marry off her daughter to a rich guy.
Yes, because it's like they are like an old established family, so the guy is interested in marrying her for her name, and she is interested in marrying the guy for his money, and it's a very opportunistic kind of situation as always. So what happens is that at the end of the day, she feels that this is unsustainable, and she loves Jack, and she go to Jack, and then the iceberg hits. And this is when, we were so focused on, Jack and Rose, Rose and Jack, that we forgot that the boat is gonna sink. This ship is sinking because it just hit the iceberg, and it seems like a surprise. But then the ship starts to sink. Women and children were the only ones that were supposed to be on the boats, but then it's just so confused, and Jack is trapped, and Rose has to go and save him, but then she gets on the boat, and then she has to jump off the boat because I jump, you jump, and there is water, and it's cold, and it's chaotic, and then Jack and Rose are still on the ship, and the ship goes vertical, and then it goes down, and then they're in the water, and then they found the door, but the door that everybody is saying that they would both have fit on the door, and Jack is in the water, it's very cold, and everybody's dying, and it's so cold, and then somebody decided, actually Mr. Fantastic decides that they're gonna
yes.
go back and look if somebody is still alive out there.
If you've heard our episode on the Fantastic Four, Ioan Gruffudd, who plays Mr. Fantastic in that movie, and whom we have called out for having this fantastic line in this movie, finally gets to say it and yell,
"Is anybody alive out there?"
Yeah, almost. Is that anyone alive out there?
But you know, guys, who isn't alive? Jack. Jack dies.
He's not alive out there.
And before dying, he made Rose promise that she would never let go of the promise, never let go, not of Jack, of the promise of keep on going and keep on fighting and surviving and make a lot of babies for some reason.
It's important.
And
does she let go?
She did not let go, but she let go of Jack, and she goes.
But he was a popsicle.
Back to the present, we discover that she has held on to the diamond this whole time. She went on, live a full life because she never let go of the promise.
Yeah, we should probably mention that this diamond is important because it's a gift from Cal to her as a wedding present. But she ends up wearing it and nothing else for Jack to draw her with. And that's the painting we see at the beginning. And through a bunch of circumstances, she ends up with the diamond once she is on the Carpathia. Should I finish the song?
Jack is dead! Whatever else you need to know! He's dead! He died!
But then he comes back for a little encore at the end of the movie, so it's fine.
Yeah, because it seems like maybe Rose is dying on the boat there very peacefully in her sleep, like Jack had said.
And she throws the diamond over the side of the ship, so it sinks to the ground just like Jack did, and it all goes kind of full circle, and the movie ends. And
Celine Dion sings.
Celine Dion sings, and just before that we see kind of a flashback to Titanic. Not a flashback, but the idea is there's a certain, an allegory for the afterlife maybe, where she is back on the Titanic and she meets back with Jack, and they're reunited on the ship where they originally united.
To me, it seems that she was kind of going and getting married because it looks like she was going down. It was not down the aisle because she was going up a staircase, but then she has a white dress and stuff.
It was very ceremonial.
Yeah, and also it's because when she arrived in New York, she gave the name as if she was Jack's wife.
That's true. It is kind of strange to say that Rose, who has lived a full life as she has promised, right? When she dies, she just goes back to when she was 18 or whatever she was supposed to be in the movie. And all the people that are in that kind of afterlife are people that were on the Titanic, including the band that played at dinner, right? But not her husband, with whom she had all those lots of babies that, were so important to Jack.
Well, but if she lived a full life because she was not letting off the promise made to Jack, is it really a full life?
That's the thing. Like, it kind of devalues that a little bit. Maybe we're reading too much into it, right? But because the point here is that the story that we saw is concluded, and as that it works. But if you actually imagine that that's somehow the afterlife, it is weird. Like, because when she walks into the stairwell with the people waiting, there's a very pronounced, I think the violinist kind of nods at her. There's been no interactions between the violinist and her.
But everybody's like, finally you're back.
Yeah, it's weird.
We've been waiting for you.
It's a little weird, but it is, I don't know, it fits, I think, the movie.
Yeah, and the band is very cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the historical it's another one of those mythical things where it's like, yes, it is like documented that they put the band out there and they played basically until the ship sank. And they show that in the movie, and it's, it's heartwarming.
So sad. All these people have died. It's real people. Like, it's not that this actor really died, but this is something that really happened. And all these people that had hopes and dreams and everything, they really died.
Yes.
It was very cold.
Yeah. I also think that, because we watch Pearl Harbor, which is also about a real thing where people died.
Yeah, but it's not realistic, so I cannot really imagine that these people really died.
I think we should talk about this. Like, one of the big things that makes these reactions so genuine, where you're really upset for, historical figures, even though you always knew that people died on the Titanic, is that it feels so incredibly real. Like, the scale and the lengths to which they went to actually make this feel like it might actually be that ship that sailed in 1912 is astonishing. It starts kind of with the history of it. Like, a lot of characters in this movie are real people that existed. Like
Unsinkable Molly.
Unsinkable Molly is probably the most prominent example. But many of the staff. Even we talked about Mr. Fantastic, right? Who is in the background of 3 scenes, and then in the end he comes, we kind of know who he is, even though he's not relevant until he becomes relevant. And it's a lot of that kind of there's a lot of care put into every single little detail. Like, Ioan Gruffudd was there on all those shooting days, even though he had nothing to do but stand there.
Yeah, what I like is also how the shooting is used to both make you immerse more and highlight things. For example, at the beginning, you see that they unveil the safe that Carl brings with him everywhere, and it's full of mud, and they touch all this mud. And then when they move to Rose in her real life, she's doing pottery, so she's also touching mud. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like a nice transition, and they do all this nice transition that it doesn't really need, it's not that he's telling you something that needs to be told, or some information setting up, but it's very nice that everything is organic.
Yeah, everything feels connected and everything comes back. Everything has its purpose, so to speak. I think this is, for better or worse, the writing of James Cameron. He goes for a lot of cliches in this movie, and that can be criticized, I think. But he also doesn't just do it for the sake of it. Again, contrast to maybe Pearl Harbor, where it's just whatever, we'll put these cliches in
also here. Objectively, this movie is pretty cheesy, but while you're watching it, it doesn't feel too cheesy. Maybe there are 2 or 3 instances in which you feel maybe it's a bit too much, but not as many as I would
genuine.
Expected. Yeah.
When Rose and Jack first meet, Jack is looking at the stars, and then before they bang, she goes to the stars, in the car. And it's all of these little things just all
because I thought that is also the last thing that he saw. because they were
is
under
true.
the stars.
In a sick way, they did go to the stars. I mean, there's something eerily beautiful about sort of the last 20 minutes of the movie where you just constantly see the starry sky and nothing else because they're just in complete darkness. And it's like, it's like a beautiful sight, but there's a horror beneath it in the waters.
I didn't thought it was a beautiful sight, people. I just was thinking that their hair was icicles and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the second kind of aspect of why this feels so grand is just the second part of the movie, which is let's watch this ship just get completely demolished and the horror of that. And sometimes, this is a 3-hour movie. Does it have to be that long? Like, couldn't you not be so sick and show us all these people dying in this much detail? But at the same time, it's kind of supposed to contrast. Like it's about destroying all of these things, all of these beautiful things that the rich clung to, and showing what really matters in a situation like that, which is you just run for your life and you can't. And there's
also
and for Jack and Rose, it is love, right? Like, again, it's a cliche, but that's what it is. Like, that's what matters now.
But also I think that it's a good thing to do, because some of these tragic happenings, the more they go into the past, the more they get romanticized. But no, it was tragic. It was horrible at the time.
Like 1,000 people died.
Yeah, it's like, don't forget it. Like, the ship was nice, and then there's the iceberg and stuff. But if it gets too into like a story, like a fairy tale, then you kind of detach from the horror of it.
Yeah.
When I was about to watch the movie, I thought that Celine Dion would have sang during the movie. Like, I was so convinced that Celine Dion was gonna sing. I don't particularly like the song My Heart Will Go On, but I like how here it's never in the movie until the end credits, but it's always in the movie.
So this is because James Horner, who composed the music, worked with Celine Dion on writing the song, right? So it's the same kind of composition, and I agree, it's great. I think generally the music is fantastic in this film. It fits every scene, everything, like whatever you're supposed to feel is augmented by the music. I think the song works. I don't hate it. I like it. But I also don't think that it's something that, I can understand that some people don't like it. It's not a masterpiece, but it's nice.
I think that if it wasn't the song of the Titanic, I would not give it like 2 more seconds of thought.
Yeah.
So by itself, it doesn't stand
Just
for
some
my,
song.
yes.
Yeah. I also think that the movie sounds great. Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe the most obvious thing to point out, but there's many little things that are great, is how the ship sounds when it's starting to break apart. Like, you can hear it groan under its own weight, and like it sounds like a dragon, like deep in a cave or something, where it's like.
It sounds like a ship sinking, I imagine, to sound.
Right, which might be because of this movie. Like, that, like this is the kind of like, it's like we think a T-Rex sounds like a whale because of Jurassic Park, like these kinds of things. But this is so well done that there cannot be any doubt in our mind that this is what it would actually sound like, unless, of course, like we will go research this, like go on a sinking ship. Which I don't want.
I don't want to go there.
Yeah. So there's a very clear kind of shift in the movie just after Rose and Jack have sex and just before the iceberg hits the ship, because we go to the exterior. And so everything is blue and gray and, like dark.
And they giggle and they kiss and everybody's looking at them instead of looking at the sea.
And Murdoch, who's on the bridge, he looks down and he smiles at the young couple in love. And also the 2 guys that are on the outlook look down instead of looking forward to see if they can spot any icebergs. And so in a way, it's their fault that the Titanic sank.
Yeah, also because if it was like 20 seconds earlier that they spot the iceberg, it looks like they could almost have made it. So it could really be their fault.
That's it. I mean, isn't it fascinating that when the iceberg comes into view, this whole sequence is suspenseful, even though we know the history and we also know that this is not an alt history thing, right? Like,
yeah,
it's so. This is why this is proof that this is like competent filmmaking. Is that you take the music, you take the visuals, and the whole scene is just about whether or not the Titanic can turn.
Yeah, because
and you see the big
still really hope that it's not
right?
gonna hit.
You see the machinery as it stops and it turns to go the other way, and you see all the characters
So many
hopefully
cranks
staring
dying.
at the iceberg, and then when it hits, you're still going, that didn't look so bad. Like, it's amazing how immersive this film is, with something that is kind of trivial to the love story, because we know that the ship needs to sink for the tragedy to unfold.
Also, I love.
Well, it's not trivial. It's obviously pivotal, but it's like you wouldn't have to put it to make it suspenseful, because you kind of know that this is happening.
Also, I loved how, like, the scene of after they made contact with the iceberg, and you see the iceberg, and you see the boat going, and the people looking out the window and seeing all this ice. It's very majestic. And the power of nature against the engineering of man.
Technology versus nature.
But on the other hand, you know what's really fault is the guy that said to use all the engines.
Yes.
Because if they were going just a little bit slower, they would have totally had time to reverse the speed.
Absolutely.
The course.
So Bruce Ismay was the head of the White Star Line. He's a historical figure, and he was on the Titanic, and he was on a lifeboat. The scene where he goes on the lifeboat is also harrowing, I feel, because Murdoch turns and he sees him, and there's just a beat. It's like a classic movie beat where nothing happens, and you're just contemplating what these characters are thinking, and you feel the shame of Ismay, and you feel the disappointment of Murdoch, and the kind of the disgust at what he just saw, and then he just keeps going. Leonardo DiCaprio he is Jack. Yes. You can't imagine this movie with someone else being being Jack. Can you? Like, who else would do this? I think he becomes Jack, and he's the perfect casting. Whether or not his performance is great, you can argue about, but he's perfect for this role.
Yes, but I do think that Kate Winslet's performance is so great that all the other performances seem like a little
because
worse.
I agree that she is doing a great performance, but she feels like a choice. Like, she feels like it could have been someone else. Like, this could have been done a few different ways.
Yes, but I like that they went in this direction.
Yeah. See, that's what I mean, though. There's only one Jack, and it's Leonardo DiCaprio doing exactly what he does in this. There's no other version of that. Whereas Kate Winslet could have had, like, she's doing a lot of, like, resting bitch face in this, which works great. But she didn't have to do that. She could have done it a different way.
Like, with other actresses.
What do you mean with other actresses?
Like, they could have picked, like, 5 different
It could
roles.
even have been Kate Winslet, but yeah, I mean, you could have taken, if this movie, like if it had Kate Beckinsale from Pearl Harbor in that role, like, she could have shined in that as well.
No, I don't think so.
I think so.
Like, I think that, yes, and maybe this is why I appreciate it so much, because yes, they could have taken 5 different roads to do Rose, and they would have all worked. But this one is perfect. This is the best choice, and I appreciate it so much. Well, there was no other option for Jack, so I get what you're saying. But also, this decision was so the right decision to make this movie good, and she is very good at it because she's not conventionally romantic as a character.
Yeah. this is not really a performance issue as much as it's probably a directing issue or maybe a writing issue. But Billy Zane sometimes comes across as a little comical, especially at the end. Like, it's almost too much. She's like, especially when, and this is not a performance issue. When he runs down the stairs, he shoots at them. He shoots a piece of wood, and then he runs after them.
Yes.
And he steps on the same piece of wood, like he's a complete clown.
Yeah.
Like, that is weird, to the point where I didn't like it. But again, it's probably not. Because I think he's amazing, especially in the first half of the movie.
Yeah.
Just building up how much of an asshole he is. And it just comes across as if he is oblivious to how fucked up it is. And, you know, like, even when... Because the Kathy Bates' Unsinkable Molly calls him out, and he goes, like, you're going to cut her steak there for two? You know? Like, he just shrugs it off because...
Yeah.
He has like this weird, like, impenetrable... He's that spoiled kid who's going to inherit his father's fortune, and he thinks he can do no wrong, and he thinks that, like, a fiancé is a form of property, and all of those, like, fucked up things, and he is unaware of... And, like, he's unable to self-reflect at all.
Yeah, and he decided he was gonna have Rose, and I don't even think he likes Rose so much, but he set his mind that this is what's gonna be his.
Yeah.
And this is what's gonna happen. Like, he's not even jealous at some point, as this is like, he just thinks that Jack is a thief of property. He's not jealous of the feelings that Rose has for Jack.
And you know that if they actually were to get married, you know, like, this would be the kind of husband who has, like, a mistress every year. Like, because he thinks it's fine.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy... But, again, that's Billy Zane's acting. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I think a little bit towards the end, maybe his character falls apart, and it's not so much the performance. We watched this movie in the cinema.
Yeah.
And... I mean, this could be its own podcast, but just briefly, we have to talk about the cinematic experience.
To go to the cinema?
Well, there's kind of two things. Let's first talk about Titanic specifically, because Titanic, when it came out in 1997, certainly wasn't a 3D movie, and now it is. And the first time it went back into cinemas, so I guess the second time it was in cinemas, that was the appeal of it. It was like Titanic, but in 3D now. Now, I didn't watch it then, but we watched it now in 3D. Did you feel... it did anything for you? Did you like it that it's 3D specifically?
No. Also, like, the first time I watched Titanic, I watched it on a not flat screen TV, on a VHS machine, and to me it gave, like, the same effect, probably. Like, I was still very scared of the water.
But the effect, you know, you can tell when it's like, oh, now it's 3D. Sometimes things come toward you, or there's some depth to some of the shots. And it's like a cool gimmick, as like, oh, the technology is kind of cool, but I don't want to watch a movie like that, kind of.
It's nice when there are, like, floating things, but it's not worth, like, having then, like, something, because sometimes you want to, like, kind of concentrate on something that is out of shot. And you cannot really do with 3D. So
it feels like the blurry things, you can't look at them.
Yeah.
Because on a 2D film, the things that are out of focus, they're just kind of blurry, but you can still look at them.
Yeah.
It almost feels like you can't with 3D. And it feels like restrictive.
You've been told what to look at.
And I actually think that that's fine if that's how we already consumed movies anyway. Well, because this is called guiding the view, right? Like, you're looking at something, and then the movie tells you where to look next.
I don't do that.
And but you do it just without being aware of it.
Yeah, but I want to choose, like, if I want to keep going look at something that is out of focus now.
Absolutely.
I know that you're telling me that I should look at
My point is, if 3D movies were how movies were conceived in the first place, we would not have a problem with that. This is a fine way of watching movies, but it's different from how we already enjoy movies, and more importantly, how movies are generally made, and therefore... there's just, like, to us it feels like something is taken away from us.
Yeah.
And that is bad. I also think that there's trade-offs. The 3D movie looks less bright, which I don't like. I mean, everything looks a little bit dim, because that's what these glasses
That
do.
I actually liked.
And also less vibrant. The colors felt slightly more flat, which is probably the exact same effect. And I don't know, I like a nice, clear, crisp image. And I think this movie looks fantastic. I think especially another thing that I really love about this movie is are all the exterior shots of the ship, both kind of close when you see it because sailing into the sunset, but also the one where you see them shooting off flares.
Yeah.
And it's just, it feels like they're in nowhere. And I don't know, like, I want to see the colors. I want it to be contrasty and all that. And I don't want to be it weird and gray. So 3D, stop it. I know that the worst part is, like, I hadn't seen it in 3D, and I've seen 3D before and always felt this way. But James Cameron is like a quote-unquote pioneer of 3D, at least of this iteration, because 3D comes and goes. So I would have thought maybe Titanic in 3D is one of the best 3D experiences you can have. So maybe there is something to it. No, still not.
I do think that still the best 3D experience you can have is not a good experience.
It's not as good as if you had just a proper movie.
Yes.
Let's maybe talk about our specific experience, because it was awful.
Yes.
I mean, so mostly the people. The people kept talking. A lady next to me started laughing at very sad things because she was embarrassed, I think, that she was crying. One lady
I was crying without being embarrassed. I was crying. I cry all the time, but also, like, people are dying. Yeah. Jack dies. People, like, I don't know if you know this, but Jack dies. Jack dies.
The lady next to you was, like, streaming or something.
Yeah, she was, like
Instagram.
Doing an Instagram reel.
Fucking hell. The ladies in front of us, when the flying thing happened, started taking pictures with the flash on. The one thing I liked about going to the cinema is that the sound, like, could be louder, because I have kind of shitty neighbors and I can't turn up the sound to the point that I like. However, I have to say, the movie was too loud for me. Maybe I'm getting old, but the next morning I woke up and I had, like, a weird, there was, like, a kind of a layer of gunk on my ears, it felt, and I couldn't hear. It cleared up, but it clearly was getting stressed a little bit, because towards the end the movie does get loud.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think that everything is too loud and too bright for me, so...
Yeah. The officer, Murdoch, who kills himself...
Yeah.
There's no record of him killing himself. And in his hometown, he was considered kind of, you know, like a hero, like one of the people that helped people get off the Titanic. And so his family was quite upset at the 1997 movie Titanic, where they show their great-grandfather, like, basically taking money, like taking a bribe and then killing himself. Cowardly.
But he kills himself after he kills Tommy, and you realize what happened to him. Like how the emergency dehumanized him, and so he didn't want to keep on going. So I don't think that... I know that for many people in many cultures, suicide is something that should not happen. But in this case, it was very... Like, I can't recognize with myself, and I can't live with myself, because, like, this tragedy happened, and this is what I've done now.
But you can look at that as a selfish thing, because he could have done a lot more good being alive on that ship in that situation.
Well, it was the last boat, basically. Like, everybody was basically doomed. Like, it was the last boat going there, so there was not much left to do. Maybe. It's not that it was, like, at the beginning of things.
You know, we can talk about this right now. The thing that I absolutely love about this movie, among all the many other things, is Murdoch. And it's not necessarily like he's not much on screen, but he has a very beautiful trajectory in terms of the way he's portrayed. He is on the bridge when the Titanic sails out. And he looks like a little boy. He looks like a happy little boy who's excited to get on this maiden voyage of the most exciting ship of his career, probably.
Yeah.
And every time we see him, he looks a little older. And then in the end, obviously, it's all the blue and grey light. He looks like he aged like 20, 30 years. He looks like an old man, and he kills himself. And it's like, it's not so much that I like this story because it's a very simple and somewhat obvious trajectory. I like the filmmaking behind it, how there's just so much care put into like this side character who is a historical figure but otherwise kind of unimportant. Like, yes, he's the man on the bridge when it all happens, but that's it, kind of. Yeah. Like, other than that, he was just another person that was employed by the White Star Line. And the fact that they go and say, how can we have Murdoch go through an actual development visually, because he doesn't have all that many lines, this is why I love this movie in general. It's because like Murdoch is an example of how every little detail is treated in this movie. What is the thing you absolutely loved about this?
Unsinkable Molly.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's my favorite.
That's great.
I also like Tommy, by the way. Tommy is cool.
Tommy something, the Irish guy.
Yeah.
Kathy Bates is fantastic as the Unsinkable Molly. She's just like cool in every scene. Except at the very end where she kind of gives in to peer pressure.
Well, I think that like she is, by the fact that her life is what it is, she is realistic and she knows that they would just like thrown her off the ship because there is no way of convincing them. Like if she didn't convince them in the first place.
But everything she says is like perfect. Like also when she goes like, like these are your men out there.
Yeah.
And like it just hits. And everything hits when she dresses Jack and she goes like, do you have any idea what you're doing? And she's like at the same time kind of judging him.
Yeah.
Kind of warning him. Yeah. Like, son, like, let me help you. It's so endearing. Like, Kathy Bates is incredible in this movie and in everything I've seen her in.
Yeah, and I keep thinking that the dogs are hers because in the office she has always these dogs, and then...
What dogs are you talking about?
The dogs on the Titanic.
There are some dogs at the beginning.
But I think that they're not her dogs, but I keep thinking that it must be her dogs because nobody else in first class would be so cool to have dogs.
The dogs... So, it's interesting you pointed this out to me. When I said, like the dogs, they're really a vehicle to show the class differences. Right? At the beginning, they're like checking the third class passengers for lice, and then you immediately see the dogs just getting on uninspected. But then you pointed out to me that the dogs disappear.
Yes, the dogs die, guys. These dogs are doomed. Yeah. Nobody cares for the dog. Nobody cares for all the other people. Who cares for the dog? I care for the dogs. And the dogs, I like that James Cameron was very accurate in portraying the hell that men were going through, but they didn't show that the dogs were sad, because that would have been too much.
That's the thing, though. That would have been... I feel like that would be a Cameron thing to do. Maybe there's some scenes they cut.
Thank you, James, because I would have died if you had shown me that the dogs were suffering.
It would have been an easy way of like pulling some heartstrings, right? Showing sad dogs.
It would be too much.
It would be cruel.
Like you could show me the crying babies as many as you want.
Yeah.
And I would feel bad, but I will survive. But if you show me that the dog is there crying.
Crying dogs.
I would have to leave the theater because it would have been too much.
Yeah. What is the thing you absolutely hate?
I think that I'm the King of the World and I'm Flying Jack are the only two scenes that I didn't like of this movie. Like they sound the fakest.
Okay. I think they both work.
Okay.
But they both have one issue that I pointed out in the cinema actually, which it's weird that they're alone. Like, they're in one of the most scenic places on the entire ship, and no one ever, like, comes close to them at all. It's weird that they have that big stage to themselves. Especially considering at the beginning of the movie, everybody is there. And then, 50 minutes later, no one is there anymore, and Jack and Fabrizio are the only ones.
Maybe because they are such a famous scenes, I'm the King of the World and I'm
You cannot reject it because it's too big.
I didn't just paint me as your French girl. It's kind of like that it's famous, but it kind of works. Like you can accept it.
But that scene is so tender. It's like incredible.
Yes.
Like it's a quiet scene with just the piano, and it's supposedly it's actually James Horner playing the piano.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I think that there are many things that you have already seen, but then you see, okay, it's kind of worth the hype. While these two pieces is like, I don't think it's worth the hype.
Yeah.
Maybe if they were so hyped, I wouldn't feel that they were like.
So it's rejected because it's overrated.
I think that like these specific two scenes are overrated, while there are so many things that like they are not overrated, that I don't know why these two like rose to the.
Yeah.
Oh.
Here's what I hate. There are a few small kind of like obvious slip-ups in the script where people say things that are stupid. The one that I'll point out here is James Cameron's shorthand for showing that Jack knows art is with
Picasso.
not the Picasso thing. It's the Monet thing. So he sees the Monet of Kate Winslet's, of Rose's like collection, and he goes like, "Oh, I love Monet. Look at his use of color. Isn't he great?" Like that is the most layman's way of describing art. His use of color. You know, like he's not saying anything. Anybody could say that. It's so, you know, like this is one of those situations where you know he's trying to convey that Jack is good with, like he knows what art is, and so he connects with Rose on that. Yeah. But what he's actually saying means absolutely nothing.
I was not listening to what he said, because I think that what conveys it is actually like how he goes close to the paint, because he was actually seeing a Monet close, like in real life.
Yeah.
And he goes and looks at it. He's tracing the paintbrush, and so this is what makes me feel that he's really liking the art. Right. And what he says on top of that, I didn't really pay attention.
I kind of identify with a lot of what Jack says. No, but like just because I'm a sappy kind of, you know, like I like
You're the king of the world.
I like grand statements and things like that. I really like when he talks to Rose in the gym, and he says, "I have I have $10 to my name, and no future, and I can't offer you anything." And he's like super real with her, and he thinks that will convince her, and it doesn't. And it's like that would be me. You know?
But I actually convinced her, but she's always like she has a little bit of a lag. Yeah.
So why is Titanic such a phenomenon? Do you think? You know, like because it's been in cinemas 3 times, and it's set. Not necessarily records, but at least it's been at the top of the box office every time. What is that about?
It's a long movie that doesn't feel like a long movie. Like it's kind of epic. It's I think that Titanic, the ship, is a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And the movie is well done, so it's a phenomenon also.
Yeah. It's competent filmmaking with broad appeal.
Yeah.
It's also a very simple story. It's a historical thing, plus Romeo and Juliet on top.
Yes. Also, they do. Everybody likes to see destruction. Like I think that destruction and like a boat getting destroyed. That
was especially a thing in the 90s.
Very appealing.
Yeah, if it's well done, which again, this like you know if you get something to see.
Yes, in the 90s, like CGI. I remember watching the Fast and the Furious movies because I loved the car crashing into
in the 90s?
Things. I think it's in the 2000s.
I would have thought so, but it's possible.
I don't know. I like just watching videos on buildings being demolished.
Yeah, I mean the big standout thing here in the 90s is Independence Day. I mean they marketed it with going like we'll blow up the White House. You know.
I never watched Independence Day.
You don't have to. It's not particularly good, but
it's not in the collection.
No.
Oh.
We can still watch it. We're allowed to watch other things.
No. And I don't know. It's a good love story. It's not a sappy love story.
It's pretty sappy because here's the issue that this love story has, and that it's modeled after Romeo and Juliet. And Romeo and Juliet also has this problem, which is they meet each other and they think they can't live without each other within 2 days.
Yeah.
And that is unrealistic, and that's why it's sappy. Because every time you remember that they just met, it feels overly dramatic.
But it makes you feel like it's not as sappy as it is.
Because
like he just lured into the sap very smoothly.
Absolutely. There's just so much more going on that is also interesting about this. So you're not thinking about the minutiae of it. Because if you did, it would be kind of cheap. is this movie overall overrated, or does it get to remain in the
It remains in the collection. I do have to say, since it's so hyped, it could actually be slightly overrated, but I don't care. It stays in the collection. I like it. And people, like, I'm heartbroken because if you haven't heard it before, Jack dies.
Now, the really important question here is, do both copies get to stay? One of them has a French dub.
What is the one with the light blue cover or the dark blue cover?
The light blue cover has a French dub.
So they both get to stay because the dark blue cover is better. I don't like the light blue cover.
But you like the French dub?
Well, you never know what you can use it for. You can be painted like his French girls in French.
Now, I'm going to edit this podcast, but I just want to let people know we've been talking for like over 1.5 hours. This is crazy. We can't do 1.5 hour podcast on Titanic. We could, but we shouldn't.
We did, but we shouldn't have.
We won't. So let's cut this off here, and let's just briefly mention that next time there will be another movie.
And it's gonna be Reign of Fire.
That is correct, from 2002, I think.
And I hope they're gonna be dragons.
Yes, it's the movie with Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale about, I don't know, fighting dragons or something. We'll see you then.
On the Parliament.
No, that's just the cover.
That's just the House of Parliament.
That's just
There's
the
the
DVD.
Big Ben out there.
That's just a DVD cover. Don't get your hopes up. We'll see you then.
Okay, bye.